Welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. If you're a coin collector or even just someone with a curious mind about your spare change, you're going to want to pay close attention today. In this video, we're talking about the specific penny that might be sitting in your coin jar, or even in your pocket, right now, the 1982D Lincoln penny. You might think it's just a regular old penny, but trust me, there are some very rare and valuable varieties of this coin that are worth a lot more than just 1 cent. In fact, some could be worth hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars. So, let's break it down and see why this penny could be a hidden treasure in your collection. Let's dive right in. Music fades out. First things first, let's quickly get familiar with the 1982D Lincoln penny. This penny was minted in Denver and, like all Lincoln pennies, it features the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. However, what makes the 1982 penny interesting is what was happening at the U.S. Mint during this time. Cut to a close-up of a 1982D Lincoln penny. In 1982, there was a major change in U.S. coinage, specifically with the composition of the penny. For decades, pennies were made primarily of copper. But starting in 1982, the U.S. Mint began transitioning to a new composition of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper due to rising copper prices. This means that pennies minted in 1982 can actually be made from two different metals, copper and the new zinc alloy. And this is where things get interesting. Rarest coins. Now, the 1982 penny comes in two distinct types based on its composition: the copper-based 1982 penny and the zinc-based 1982 penny. And this transition year is key when it comes to value. The copper pennies were struck before the composition change, while the zinc pennies were struck after the change. Cut to image comparing copper and zinc-based 1982 pennies, showing the color difference. As you can see, the copper pennies have a reddish-brown color, while the zinc pennies are much lighter in color, almost more of a dull brownish hue. But here's the catch: the copper version of the 1982 penny is much rarer, and it can be worth significantly more than its zinc counterpart. Now, let's focus on the 1982D copper penny specifically. When the minting transition took place in 1982, some of the Denver Mint's equipment was still processing the old copper plan case instead of the new zinc ones. This means that a small number of 1982D pennies were struck with the old copper composition, which is what makes this coin so rare and valuable. Cut to close-up of a 1982D copper penny under a magnifying glass. Rarest coins. These 1982D copper pennies are incredibly rare because they were only produced in limited quantities before the mint fully switched over to zinc. If you happen to have one of these, you could be sitting on a hidden gem. So, how can you tell if you have a 1982D copper penny? It's not as simple as just looking at the date. So here's how you can identify it. Cut to close-up of a 1982D penny under a magnifying lens, showing a comparison between a copper and a zinc penny. The key difference between the two types is the weight and the color. The copper 1982D penny weighs about 3.11 grams, while the zinc version weighs only about 2.5 grams. If you have a kitchen scale or a precise coin scale, you can weigh your penny to determine its composition. The copper penny will be significantly heavier than the zinc penny. If you find that your 1982D penny weighs more than 2.5 grams, you're likely holding the copper version. Rarest coins. So how much is your 1982D copper penny worth? Well, the value of these coins can vary based on their condition, but in general, they can be worth a lot more than just 1 cent. Cut to a graphic showing different values for the 1982D copper penny based on its grade. On average, a 1982D copper penny in good or fine condition can be worth anywhere from $10 to $50. However, if the penny is in excellent or mint state condition, it can easily fetch $100 or more. And in the highest grades, such as MS65 or higher, a 1982D copper penny can be worth $500 or more. In rare cases, Particularly high-quality examples could even go for $1,000 or beyond at auction. Of course. Welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. If you love discovering hidden gems in your pocket change or you're on the hunt for rare coins, you're going to want to stick around for today's video. We're talking about a coin you may have passed over without a second thought, the 1965 Lincoln penny. Now, you might be wondering, a 1965 penny, is it really worth much? Well, the answer might surprise you. There are some specific versions of the 1965 penny that could be worth way more than just 1 cent. In fact, some of these coins are worth hundreds, or even thousands, of dollars. So, if you've got a 1965 penny lying around, it could be time to take another look. Let's dive in. Music fades out. Alright, before we jump into the rare varieties, let's start with a quick rundown of the 1965 Lincoln penny. Like most pennies, it features Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front, and on the back, we see the classic Lincoln Memorial design, which was used from 1959 until 2008. But here's the interesting part. 1965 is a year that falls right in the middle of a huge transition in U.S. coinage. And that transition is what makes the 1965 Lincoln penny special, especially if it's one of the rare types. Cut to close-up of a standard 1965 Lincoln penny. While most 1965 pennies are common and worth only 1 cent, certain key varieties have increased in value over time. So, what makes these specific 1965 pennies stand out? Rarest coins. To understand why the 1965 penny can be valuable, let's first talk about what happened at the U.S. Mint in 1965. Up until that point, pennies were primarily made of 95% copper, but in 1965, due to rising copper prices and a national coin shortage, the U.S. Mint made a critical change. Instead of using a high percentage of copper, they switched to a new composition, copper-plated zinc. This new mixture made the coins much lighter and cheaper to produce. So, by 1965, the Mint started striking coins with a completely different look and feel compared to the earlier copper pennies. Cut to animations showing the difference in composition between copper and zinc-based pennies. While most of the pennies minted in 1965 were made with a new copper-plated zinc, there were still some 1965 copper pennies produced before the Mint fully switched over. These copper versions are extremely rare, and that's one of the reasons the 1965 penny can be so valuable. Now, let's get into the real treasure. Some of the 1965 Lincoln pennies were actually struck on copper plancates of the same kind of plancase used in earlier years. This happened because the Mint was still working through a transition, and a small number of the copper plancase were accidentally left in the presses. Cut to close-up of a 1965 copper penny next to a regular 1965 zinc penny. The copper 1965 pennies are extremely rare and, as a result, they're worth much more than the standard zinc version. If you happen to find a 1965 penny that feels heavier and has a reddish color typical of older pennies, it could be one of these copper-based errors. Rarest coins. So how can you tell if you have one of these rare 1965 copper pennies? Here are a few tips to help you identify them. Cut to a close-up of a 1965 penny under a magnifying glass. First, the weight. A regular 1965 penny made from zinc weighs about 2.5 grams, but the copper pennies weigh around 3.1 grams, just like the older copper pennies that were minted before 1965. So, if you have a scale, this is the easiest way to check if your penny is copper or zinc. Next, look at the color. Copper pennies have that familiar reddish-brown color, while the zinc pennies have a duller, more brownish hue. You can also do a simple test by using a magnet. Zinc pennies are not magnetic, but copper pennies will not attract a magnet either. So, if your penny sticks to a magnet, it's definitely not copper. So, what's the value of a 1965 copper penny? Well, as you might expect, the copper 1965 pennies are worth quite a bit more than their zinc counterparts. Let's break it down. Cut to a graphic showing the price ranges for the 1965 copper penny. A copper 1965 penny in good condition can start at around $50, but if it's in excellent or mint condition, it can be worth $100 or more. Some of the highest quality copper 1965 pennies, graded MS65 or higher, have been sold for $500 to $1,000 at aone. Welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. If you're a coin enthusiast, or just curious about rare and valuable pennies, you're in for a treat today. We're diving into a penny you may have in your pocket right now, the 2008 Lincoln penny A, and trust me, this little coin could be worth a lot more than its face value. Stick around to find out why and how you can cash in on it. Let's get started. Music fades out. Alright, first things first, what exactly is the 2008 Lincoln penny? This is a regular-looking penny, minted in 2008 at the Denver Mint, and it's made from a copper-plated zinc composition. The obverse side features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, and the reverse shows the familiar Lincoln Memorial. Nothing too unusual at first glance, but here's where things get interesting. Cut to close-up of a 2008 Lincoln penny. While the 2008 penny was produced in high numbers, there's something about it that makes certain examples extremely rare and valuable today. You'll want to pay attention, because you might have one of those hidden gems. So, what makes the 2008 penny so valuable? Well, the answer lies in a few key factors. First, it's important to note that most of these pennies are worth just 1 cent, as you'd expect. But there are certain varieties of the 2008 penny that can be worth a whole lot more. Cut to images of various 2008 pennies. Some of these pennies have unusual characteristics that make them stand out from the rest. For example, there's a rarer known as the 2008 satin finish penny. Now, you might be asking, what's a satin finish? In 2008, the U.S. Mint issued coins with different finishes, a regular, shiny finish for circulation coins and a satin finish for coins that were intended for proof sets. These satin finish coins weren't supposed to be released into circulation, but sometimes, a few of them slipped through the cracks. Cut to close-up of a satin finish penny. A 2008 penny with a satin finish is extremely rare and valuable. In fact, collectors are willing to pay big money for these because they're so scarce. If you find one of these, you could be looking at a penny worth hundreds of dollars or more, depending on its condition. Rarest coins. Aside from the satin finish, there are a couple of other varieties that could boost the value of your 2008 penny. One of those is the double die variety. A double die error occurs when the design is struck into the coin more than once, causing parts of the lettering or design to appear doubled or shifted. Cut to images of double die penny examples. If you spot a double die on your 2008 penny, you might have a coin worth a lot more than a penny. The most famous double die on a 2008 penny is the one with doubled lettering on the word Liberty on the obverse, or the date, a 2008. These errors can sell for several $100s depending on their condition. So, how can you tell if your 2008 penny is worth more than 1 cent? Here are a few tips. Cut to close-up of a penny, with magnifying tool used to inspect. 1. Inspect the finish. Look closely at the surface of the penny. If it has a satin finish, it's likely a special proof coin that could be worth much more. A shiny, regular finish is what you'll usually see in circulation coins, but satin coins are rare. 2. Look for errors. Check for double die errors, especially in the Liberty or in God We Trust areas. Use a magnifying glass to look closely at the lettering. 3. Check the condition. As with all rare coins, the condition is key. Coins in mint condition with no signs of wear are more valuable than heavily worn coins. Rarest coins. Now, let's talk money. How much could a 2008 Lincoln penny be worth? Well, a regular 2008 penny is only worth 1 cent. But if you have a satin finish or a double die error, your coin could be worth anywhere from $50 to over $1,000, depending on its rarity and condition. Cut to shots of online auction sites showing prices for rare 2008 pennies. On auction sites, you can find 2008 pennies with double die errors selling for around $300 to $600 in average condition. But, if your coin is in pristine condition, you could be looking at a price closer to $1,000 or more. So, where can? Welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. If you've ever gone through your spare change and wondered if any of those pennies could be worth something, then you're in for a treat today. We're diving into a penny from 1979, specifically the 1979 Lincoln penny A, and trust me, it might just be sitting in your collection or your pocket right now, worth a lot more than its face value. Stick around to learn why, and how you can spot the valuable ones. Let's get started. Music fades out. So, let's start with the basics. The 1979 Lincoln penny is a part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909. The 1979 version was minted in Denver, as indicated by the D mint mark, and like most pennies from this time, it's made of copper-plated zinc. Cut to close-up of a 1979 Lincoln penny. Rarest coins. The design features the famous bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, and on the reverse, it shows the Lincoln Memorial, one of the most recognizable images on any U.S. coin. But here's the thing. While most of the 1979 pennies are worth only 1 cent, there are some rare varieties of this coin that could be worth hundreds, or even thousands of dollars, depending on the specific characteristics and condition. So, what makes the 1979 Lincoln penny so special? There are a couple of rare varieties that collectors are looking for, and they can significantly increase the coin's value. Let's go over them. First up is the 1979 aone penny. This variety is one of the most famous and sought-after types of 1979 pennies. You might be wondering, what's so special about this penny? Well, it's all about the spacing between the letters A and M in the word A America on the reverse side of the coin. Cut to close-up shot of the reverse side of the coin, zooming in on the AM and A America. Rarest coins on a normal 1979 penny. The A and AM in A America are very close together, but on the wide AM variety, there is a noticeable gaps between them. This difference in spacing was caused by a mistake during the minting process, and it's what makes this penny so valuable. So, how much could a 1979 wide AM penny be worth? Well, these coins are incredibly valuable, and their price can vary depending on their condition. Cut to a graphic showing prices for a 1979 wide AM penny. A 1979 wide AM penny in good condition can be worth anywhere from $50 to $100, but if you find one in uncirculated or mint state condition, it could fetch you anywhere from $300 to $600, and in some rare cases, even more. The highest graded versions can sell for upwards of $1,000. Now, how can you tell if you've got one of these rare wide AM pennies? It's pretty easy to check, once you know what to look for. Cut to close-up of the reverse side of a 1979 penny. First, flip your penny over and look closely at the word America on the reverse side. Focus on the A and M. On a regular 1979 penny, the letters will be very close together, almost touching. But on a wide AM penny, there's a noticeable gaps between them. It's best to use a magnifying glass or even a loupe to get a clear view, especially since the gap can be subtle at first glance. On the flip side, there's also the 1979 close AM penny. This is the regular version of the coin, with the A and AM very close together, as you'd expect. Cut to close-up of an normal 1979 penny, showing the A and AM closely spaced. If you have a 1979 penny and the A and M are touching or very close together, then it's a regular close AM variety, and while it's still a great piece of history, it's not as valuable as the wide AM variety. Rarest coins. Other factors that can impact the value of your 1979 penny include its condition and whether it has been properly preserved. Coins in mint or near mint condition with no wear, scratches, or discoloration will be worth significantly more than worn-out ones. Cut to shots of different grades of coins, showing the differences between a worn and a pristine coin. The grading scale for coins typically ranges from poor, P1, to mint state, MS70, and the higher the grade, the more valuable the coin. Coins that have been graded by professional organizations like PCGS or NGC are generally worth more because collectors. Welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. Today, we're going to talk about a coin that you probably have in your collection, or maybe even in your pocket right now, that could be worth a lot more than its face value. That's right. Today we're diving into the 1976 Lincoln penny, and there's more to this penny than meets the eye. Stick around as we uncover its hidden value, some rare varieties, and how you can spot the ones worth a lot of money. Let's get started. Music fades out. Rarest coins. First things first. Let's talk about the 1976 Lincoln penny and why it's so interesting. The 1976 Lincoln cent was minted during the United States bicentennial celebration, marking 200 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. While it was a year of national celebration, most of these pennies are just regular copper-plated zinc coins. However, there are a few interesting things about the 1976 Lincoln penny that make it a bit more special. Cut to close-up shot of a 1976 Lincoln penny, produced in both Denver and Philadelphia. The 1976 penny has the classic image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, and the reverse features the Lincoln Memorial, which had been used on the penny since 1959. But beyond the typical design, there are a few key things that can make your 1976 penny stand out in a big way. Before we dive into the rare varieties, let's take a moment to talk about why 1976 was such a significant year. As part of the bicentennial celebrations, the U.S. Mint made some special coins, like the bicentennial quarter, half dollar, and dollar, which are all marked with the year '1776 to 1976. But the Lincoln penny wasn't directly involved in the bicentennial redesign. However, there's something else that makes the 1976 Lincoln penny interesting. Cut to images of bicentennial quarters and other commemorative coins. The 1976 coinage had a few small, often overlooked design variations, as well as some special minting processes that resulted in certain rarities. While these changes are subtle, they can make a big difference in value for collectors. So, if you find a 1976 penny in your collection, it's definitely worth taking a closer look. Alright, now let's get to the good stuff. The rare and valuable 1976 Lincoln pennies. The first major variety to talk about is the 1976 double die obverse penny. Now, this one is definitely worth checking for, because it can be worth a lot more than just 1 cent. Cut to close-up of the obverse of a 1976 penny with the magnifying tool highlighting the double lettering. The 8 double die obverse variety occurs when the coin's die is misaligned during the minting process, causing the design to be stamped more than once, resulting in doubled features on the obverse side of the coin. The most noticeable doubling happens in the word liberty and the date 1976. So, how can you tell if you've got one of these rare 1976 double die obverse pennies? The key is to look closely at the lettering. Cut to close-up of the word liberty on a 1976 penny, showing the doubling effect. Take a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe and examine the word liberty on the obverse of the coin. If you see a noticeable doubling or a shift in the letters, then you've likely got the double die variety. The date 1976 may also show doubling again. Look for a second image of the numbers. Now, let's talk about the value of these double die pennies. A 1976 double die obverse penny can be worth quite a bit more than just 1 cent, depending on its condition. Cut to graphics showing prices for different conditions of the 1976 double die obverse penny. A 1976 double die penny in good condition can be worth anywhere from $50 to $100, while one in fine or very fine condition could fetch you $200 or more. The really high-grade coins are the ones with no wear, perfect details, and those beautiful mint luster can easily reach $500 to $1,000 or even higher at auction, depending on demand and rarity. Rarest coins. Another interesting variation of the 1976 Lincoln penny is the 1976 penny with no mint mark. You may already know that most coins minted in 1976 were either produced at the Denver Mint, which would have a D mint mark, or the Philadelphia Mint, which typically doesn't have a mint mark, but sometimes you'll find a 19. Welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. If you're a coin collector or even just someone who's curious about rare pennies, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into the 1975 Lincoln penny. Now, you might be thinking, a 1975 penny, is that really worth anything? Well, buckle up, because some of these pennies could be worth a lot more than just 1 cent. Stick around to find out why this coin has some serious value, and how you can spot the rare versions. Let's get started. Music fades out. Rarest coins first. Let's take a quick look at the basics of the 1975 Lincoln penny. The 1975 penny is made of copper-plated zinc and was produced in both Denver and Philadelphia. Like most Lincoln pennies, the design features President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The coin was minted in very large quantities, so most of these pennies you will come across are going to be worth only 1 cent. But yes, there's a but. There are some key varieties of the 1975 penny that collectors are willing to pay big money for. Let's dive into those rare versions. Cut to close-up of a 1975 Lincoln penny. Though it may look like your typical penny, there are some significant differences in the 1975 Lincoln cent that can make it a real gem for collectors. So what makes the 1975 Lincoln penny special? Well, it's all about a few rare varieties that stemmed from minting errors or unique characteristics. If you have one of these rarities, you could be holding onto a coin worth a lot more than just a penny. Let's go over the key varieties of the 1975 Lincoln penny that are worth keeping an eye out for. Rarest coins. First up, the 1975 double-die obverse penny. This is one of the most sought-after varieties, and it can be worth a pretty penny if you're lucky enough to find one. The double-die obverse occurs when the coin's die is misaligned during the minting process, causing the design to be struck more than once. This leads to doubled features on the obverse of the coin, and in the case of the 1975 penny, the doubling usually appears on the word A Liberty and the date A 1975. Cut to close-up of a 1975 penny, zooming in on the Liberty and 1975 to highlight the doubling. When you closely examine the word A Liberty, you might notice that the letters are doubled, especially at the top or side of the letters. Similarly, the date A 1975 might show a second set of faint numbers. This is what we call a double-die obverse set, and it's highly prized by collectors. Now, how do you know if you've got a 1975 double-die penny? Here's how to spot it. Cut to detailed shots of the 1975 double-die obverse penny under a magnifying glass, focusing on the word A Liberty and the date. First, grab a magnifying glass or a loupe. Then, examine the word A Liberty very closely. On a normal penny, the letters will be sharply defined and crisp, but on the double die, you'll see a clear separation between the parts of the letters. For example, the L might show two distinct strokes, one above the other. Do the same for the date 1975. You should be able to notice a doubling effect if the coin has this error. So, how much is this 1975 double-die penny worth? Well, this is where it gets exciting. Cut to a graphic showing price ranges for the 1975 double-die obverse penny in different conditions. A 1975 double-die obverse penny in good condition can be worth anywhere from $50 to $100, but in fine or very fine condition, it could easily fetch $200 or more. And if your penny is in mint state, meaning it has little to no wear and the doubling is clear and crisp, you might be looking at anywhere from $500 to $1,000 or even more, depending on its quality and the demand from collectors. Rarest coins. Another important variety of the 1975 Lincoln penny is the 1975 no mint mark penny. As you know, most pennies from the 1970s have a mint mark indicating whether they were made as the Denver or Philadelphia Mint. However, in 1975, some pennies were minted at the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark. Most 1975 pennies you'll find will have a D for Denver or no mint mark at all. which is pretty standard. But there is a small group of these unmarked 1975 pennies that are a bit rarer. Cut to close-up of a 1975 penny with no mint mark, a 1975 penny from Philadelphia. Welcome back to the channel. If you're a coin collector or just someone who's into finding hidden treasures in your pocket change, then you've come to the right place. Rarest coins. Today, we're going to talk about a specific penny that could be worth way more than just 1 cent of the 1968 Lincoln penny. Now, you might think it's just a regular old penny, but trust me, there are certain versions of this coin that can fetch you a pretty penny or even a lot more than that. So, if you have a 1968 Lincoln penny lying around, you might want to take a closer look because you could be sitting on a rare and valuable find. Let's get into it. Music fades out. Alright, let's first take a quick look at the 1968 Lincoln penny. It's got the classic design, with Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, which was used for most of the 20th century. But here's where things get interesting. 1968 was a transitional year for U.S. coins, and that's part of why this penny could be worth a lot more than you'd expect. Cut to close-up of a 1968 Lincoln penny. 1968 was the first year that the U.S. Mint switched from a pure copper composition to a copper-plated zinc composition for pennies. So, depending on the specific coin, some 1968 pennies were made with the older copper alloy, while others were made with a newer zinc copper-plated design. This makes the 1968 penny an interesting year for collector set, and it's actually one of the main reasons why you need to pay attention to this particular coin. So, why is the composition of the 1968 penny so important? Let me explain. Prior to 1968, U.S. pennies were made entirely of copper, which meant they were heavy and had a distinct reddish-brown color. But in the late 1960s, copper prices were rising, and the U.S. Mint needed to cut costs. So, in 1968, the Mint introduced a new formula for the penny, a core made of 99.2% zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper. This change made pennies much cheaper to produce and lighter in weight. Cut to animations showing the difference between copper and copper-plated zinc pennies. Rarest coins. The new copper-plated zinc pennies, which were produced starting in 1968, are what you're most likely to find today when you come across a 1968 penny. But there's a key detail. Some 1968 pennies were struck on leftover copper plancase of the same kind of plancase used before the switch to zinc. Now here's the big reveal. The 1968 copper penny, the one made from the older, full copper alloy, is incredibly rare, and if you've got one, you could be holding onto something worth a lot of money. Cut to close-up of a 1968 copper penny, highlighting the reddish-brown color. These rare copper 1968 pennies were struck before the Mint completely switched over to the zinc formula, and they're worth more than just face value. In fact, these copper pennies are in very limited supply. Many of them were pulled from circulation or melted down, which means there were only a small number of them left. So, how can you tell if you have one of these rare copper 1968 pennies? Here are some tips to help you identify it. Cut to close-up of a 1968 penny being weighed on a scale. First, the weight. A standard copper-plated zinc 1968 penny weighs about 2.5 grams, but the older copper 1968 penny made with pure copper will weigh about 3.1 grams. So, if you have a coin scale at home, that's an easy way to tell the difference. Cut to close-up of a 1968 penny under a magnifying glass showing a comparison of the color. Rarest coins. Next, look at the color. The copper 1968 penny will have a reddish-brown hue just like older pennies made of pure copper, while the zinc penny will be duller and have a lighter brown color. So, if you have a 1968 penny that feels heavier and looks redder in color, you might just have one of these rare copper pennies. So, how much is the 1968 copper penny worth? Well, this is where things get really interesting. Because these copper pennies are so rare, they can be worth much more than just 1 cent. Cut to graphics showing the value of a 1968 copper penny based on its grade and condition. A 1968 copper penny in good condition can be worth anywhere from $10 to $50. depending on how well it's been preserved. But the real value comes when the coin is in excellent or mint state condition. In those cases, welcome back to the channel. Rarest coins. If you're a coin collector or just someone who loves finding treasures in their pocket change, you're in for a treat today. In this video, we're going to be talking about a penny you've probably seen before but might not know is worth way more than just one setup. The 1964D Lincoln penny. That's right, the 1964D Lincoln penny could be hiding some real value, and I'm here to tell you all about why that is. So, if you've got a 1964D in your collection or just lying around in your spare change, stick around, because you could be holding on to something worth a lot more than you think. Let's get started. Music fades out. Rarest coins. Alright, let's start with a quick look at the 1964D Lincoln penny. As you probably know, it features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, designed by Victor David Brenner, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, which was used from 1959 to 2008. The 1964D penny was minted in Denver, as indicated by the AD mint mark beneath Lincoln's bust. Cut to close-up of a 1964D Lincoln penny. Rarest coins. 1964 was a significant year for U.S. coinage, as it marked the final year that pennies were minted in the traditional 90% copper composition before transitioning to a new mix of 95% copper and 5% zinc in 1965. The 1964 pennies were made of mostly copper and are very similar to earlier Lincoln pennies in both look and feel. But here's where it gets interesting. There are rarer varieties of the 1964D penny that make this coin valuable. Let's break it down. Before we get into the rare varieties, let's first talk about the mint mark itself. The AD mint mark on the 1964D penny indicates that it was minted in Denver, which is important for collectors. The 1964D is the second most common penny of 1964 after the 1964 Philadelphia version, but it's still important to remember that the mint ages and varieties can make some of these pennies far more valuable than others. Now, let's get to the good stuff. One of the rarest and most valuable types of 1964D Lincoln pennies is the 1964D double die obverse. This is an error coin that occurs when the die used to strike the coin is improperly aligned, resulting in a doubling effect on the design. You'll notice the doubling most clearly on the letters of A Liberty, the date A 1964, and the motto A In God We Trust. Cut to close-up of a 1964D double die obverse penny showing the doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust. The doubled effect can range from slight to very noticeable, depending on the severity of the error. In some cases, you'll see a second image of the letters or numbers, which is the telltale sign of a double die. Rarest coins. Now, let's talk about the real reason you're here. How much is this 1964D double die obverse penny worth? Well, this is where it gets exciting. A well-preserved 1964D double die obverse penny can be worth a lot more than a regular penny. Cut to graphic showing the value of a 1964D double die obverse penny in different conditions. In lower grades, the coin can be worth anywhere from $10 to $20, but if the doubling is clear and prominent, the value can jump to $50 to $100 or more. For coins in higher grades, meaning they have less wear and tear, these can easily sell for $200 to $500, and in MS65 or higher condition, you could see the coin fetching $1,000 or more at auction. Some collectors will pay top dollar for this error coin, especially when it's in pristine, high-grade condition. Now that we know how valuable the 1964D double die obverse penny can be, how do you actually spot one? It's all about looking closely at the details. Cut to close-up of a 1964D penny under magnification, highlighting the double letters on Liberty and In God We Trust. Rarest coins. First, get a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe to really zoom in on the obverse, the front of the coin. Pay close attention to A Liberty and A In God We Trust. If you notice a slight or obvious doubling of the letters or the numbers in the year, you could have a double die error on your hands. Another quick test is to tilt the coin under the light. If the doubling is subtle, the extra impressions will catch the light at different angles, making it easier to spot. But the 1964D. Welcome back to the If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a chance to discover valuable hidden treasures in your pocket change. Rarest coins today, we're diving deep into a coin that's often overlooked by many collectors, the 1962D Lincoln penny. Now, at first glance, this might seem like just another standard penny, but trust me, 1962D pennies could be worth a lot more than just 1 cent, especially if you know what to look for. So, if you've got one of these coins stashed away, or if you're just curious, stick around, because you won't want to miss what we're about to reveal. Music fades out. Rarest coins. Let's start with a quick refresher on the 1962D Lincoln penny. Like all Lincoln pennies, it features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the front, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, the back. This design has been in use since 1909 and was created by Victor David Brenner. The aone mark on the 1962 penny tells us that this coin was produced at the Denver Mint. Cut to close-up shots of a 1962D Lincoln penny, focusing on both sides. 1962 was part of a critical period in U.S. coinage history. It was one of the last years pennies were made entirely from 90% copper, before the switch to a copper zinc mix in 1965. That means the 1962D penny is primarily copper, and this plays a huge role in its value. $4 million rarest coins. Now, let's talk about the value of a standard 1962D penny. You might think it's only worth 1 cent, and you'd be right for the most part. A typical 1962D penny in circulated condition usually trades for about 1 cent, the same as any other modern penny you'd find in your change. But here's the catch: there are certain factors, including errors and special varieties, that can make this penny worth a lot more than just its face value. $4 million rarest coins. So, what makes a 1962D Lincoln penny valuable? Well, there are a couple of key factors to look out for that can greatly increase its value. The most significant of these are error coins and varieties, which can make your coin much more desirable to collectors. Let's go over some of the most sought-after versions of this penny. Rarest coins. First up is the 1962D double die obverse penny. This is one of the most famous and valuable errors you can find in the world of coin collecting. A double die error occurs when the coin die is struck multiple times, causing the design elements to overlap or double in appearance. Cut to close-up of a 1962D double die obverse penny, showing the clear doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust. With the 1962D double die obverse, you'll see clear doubling on important design elements, like the word A Liberty and the motto A In God We Trust. The doubling can range from subtle to very noticeable, depending on the severity of the error. Some of these coins have double letters and numbers that are so clear, they almost look like they were stamped twice. So, how much can a 1962D double die obverse penny be worth? Well, this is where things get really interesting. A well-preserved 1962D double die obverse penny can be worth anywhere from $50 to $200 depending on the degree of the doubling and the condition of the coin. Cut to graphic showing the value of a 1962D double die obverse penny in different conditions. For a coin in higher grades, such as MS65 or MS66, you could see values easily climbing to $500 or more. The rarity of this error and the fact that it's a specific year and mint mark combination makes it a highly desirable piece for serious collectors. Rarest coins. So how do you identify a 1962D double die obverse penny? Let me walk you through the key details. Cut to a close-up of the word Liberty on a 1962D penny under a magnifying glass. First, Use a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe to zoom in on the word A Liberty and the motto A in God We Trust. Look for a doubling effect on the letters. If you see multiple impressions of the same letter or number, that's a sign you may have a double die. The doubling is often slightly to the right or upward. Another spot to check is the date. Sometimes, the year A 1962 will have clear doubling on the